We've got Warhammer Wednesday here. We're painting up good old Abaddon. Yeah, I say Abaddon. Some people say Abaddon. I've always said it Abaddon, so I'm just gonna say it that way. If it bothers you, sorry. It's just the way it's going. Alright, as usual, trying to get... Ooh, I think I forgot to change the name of the show on accident. Making sure things are working here, that we're... Yeah, it says Crisis Protocol. Oops. This is Warhammer Wednesday. Why is this not playing? Alrighty. Making sure we got it going here. Alright. So we got going here. We got Abaddon. This is a model, obviously primed. What's this called? Mechanicus Standard Gray. This was a lovely birthday gift from special guest Tim and my friend Sarah. They went in together on it, so thanks you two so much. Again, for this model that I love to include in the army, but just never thought I was going to buy on my own. We got a little bit of sub-assembly here. We got the body. I'm not including the cloak because I think it covers up a lot. Sorry, for some reason I thought it stopped. Or it seems to have stopped. I'm not sure what's going on here. Trying to get it so I can see what's going on with another screen, and it's not really working. So I decided not to include the back cape because I felt like it covered up too much, and I didn't really like how much of the model it was. So we've got... I'm not including that part. And then I kept the base separate. I had him glued on there briefly I played one game with him against Tim, and unfortunately we had to stop the game. My wife was sick. Before he got to do anything, he teleported in on turn 2, and we didn't get to finish that. So not sure. Would like to actually see how he does someday. I don't know why this is not working for me on Twitch. It keeps kind of restarting. Like, I just want to watch the video while it plays. Apologies again for this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might want to skip ahead a little bit here. Alright, so what we're looking at here is Abaddon. We're going to do him in the scheme of my my renegade chapter of Chaos Space Marines. We've got they're called The Freed. Sorry, I'm still trying to get this to work. I think it's finally working now. I can actually see the chat room and everything. Perfect. Hello, Dizzy Starmy. Our Dizzy Starmies. I haven't seen that name yet, so welcome. Glad you're joining. So we're going to be painting this guy up in The Freed. Give me 1 second here. I forgot to grab a model to show, but it should be taking me just a second. Alright, quickest thing I could find here, without taking too long, is an obliterator. A little bit older version of the paint job, but it's just orange. It used to be orange. It is now gray with blue trim. So this is a model I did a little over a year ago just to get table ready for a campaign we're doing at the store. Oh, hi Marisa. Yes, The Freed. So I'll talk a little bit about the background behind The Freed and whatnot as we go through this. So I prime my Chaos guys gray anymore. This Mechanicus Standard Gray. Hopefully it saves time, and that way all the gray panels are already gray. And then I just have to pick out the blue trim, which I hate doing. It's the worst part of playing Chaos Space Marines, is painting that trim. It's all over the place. So my plan here is to have him just be Abaddon, not actually Abaddon, but use Abaddon's rules, and he'll basically be a Chaos Lord type guy for The Freed when he is being used on the table. So, next thing here, we got to figure out what are we going to start with. Let's start with the first layer of blue edging just to get it over with. So I'm going to start with, I've got nothing but Citadel paints. I know other people swear by other stuff, but pretty much it comes down to this is what our local hobby store carries, is Citadel. And this is all I've ever used for the 15 plus years I've been doing this, so I'm totally good with continuing with Citadel. I know some people swear by Army Painter, or Vallejo is one I hear all the time. Some people swear by the Privateer Press's P3 paints. Like I said, this is just what I've always used. So we got Calidor Sky. I'm going to try to get it in my light here so we can see. Basic idea for the Freed anymore, what I do is I start with a base of Calidor Sky on the trim. The rest of it should already be the Mechanica Standard Gray. If I make any mistakes, I can tidy it up with Mechanica Standard. Just going to thin it a little bit with some water on the brush, give it a little bit of flow. And then I can cover both the blue and the gray with Nuln Oil to darken it and give it a shade. And then I go through and highlight it, depending on what I feel like that day. Usually highlight the blue with some, what is this, Hoeth blue, and then some parts might get an additional highlight of Lothern blue, just like on the edge or extreme edges of things, just to make it pop a little bit more. Which, this being Abaddon and special guy, he'll get some more treatment that way. It'll take a long time to paint. Already messed up. So while I'm doing the trim, which of course is the most exciting part of painting, I'll talk a little bit about the Freed, my homebrew Chaos Warband. When Ruin Seekers Episode 2 comes out, whenever that's going to be, the Ruin Seekers are actually going to go up against the Freed. A little bit of a spoiler alert, but you're going to find that out in the first few seconds of the video, I'm sure. I'm going to move my camera here just a little bit to make sure we get more of the actual painting process in the shot. I'm realizing it's not totally in there, or really at all. And the Freed are a Chaos Warband that have recently fallen. It was a whole chapter of Loyalist Marines that fell at once. I came up with kind of new fluff for them to go to flesh them out a little bit for the Ruin Seekers campaign. Our Chaos kind of Death Watch type campaign, RPG elements. Guys get to kind of gain experience, level up, and get better, get cool stuff. So the Freed used to be Chaos. Not a Chaos. They didn't start as a Chaos Warband. They were a chapter. I haven't decided what successor they are to yet, but they were a chapter called the Brazen Lords, and they were orange with blue trim. And it was very garish. And literally, my guys used to be orange with blue, and I decided I didn't like it, and repainted it. There's still a couple really old Terminators that have orange on them that look awful. So I kind of fit it into their fluff, because some of them you can see little bits of orange sticking through, and I actually kind of like that and keep it on purpose. So what their issue was that they were the defenders of a particular sector, pretty well removed from the rest of the Imperium before the fall of Cadia. And they didn't get a lot of support, and they hated that. Their numbers were pretty dwindled. They were more of an elite force of fewer guys. And then they got struck by an Orc Wa. And they got wrecked. They ended up winning, because they're still Space Marines. They did what they were supposed to do. They did fight off the Orc invasion, but they were just decimated. But during this Orc invasion, they sent out countless calls for aid to nearby systems, nearby sectors, and nobody came. They don't know if it was because they just ignored them, or if they couldn't, or if they got waylaid by warp storms or something else. They didn't care in the end. To defeat the Orcs, they had to rely on some kind of esoteric means, I guess we could say, which not everybody agreed with, but they decided was kind of necessary, and this worked against them in the end to start corrupting them. But because nobody else from the Empire showed up, a lot, like the vast majority of the civilians of their sector died. And they were just kind of like, we don't have anybody left to protect. And that uh, feeling of like being left behind and everything just got really exacerbated by this little bit of corruption they were feeling, and it got completely multiplied to the point where they ended up going completely renegade. They tried to cover up their orange with gray to kind of fit their now dour nature. They were the Brazen Lords. They didn't care about like being seen. You know, they wore garish blue and orange together, but now they kind of want to change their appearance to this gray and blue to fit their new demeanor. And they also, after this fall, they kind of decided as a group that they wanted to emulate the Night Lords. Instead of being super bright in your face, they want to go the complete opposite and be sneaky, spooky kind of guys. So they want to become. Eventually, they would like to be like folded into the Night Lords Legion. And they can't ever really be part of the Night Lords Legion because they weren't part of the Legion to begin with. But they want to be part of that. They really emulate those guys. And I say that mostly because I typically use the Night Lord's tactics on the table. Their Legion trait is typically what I feel these guys as. More and more I've been feeling them as, or planning on fielding them really, as, oh shoot, what's it called? The Red Corsairs. Mostly because I like their trait a lot more than the Night Lords. The being able to run and still charge, and then getting extra command points is pretty sweet. I haven't tried that out on the table yet, just because I don't get to play that often. But that's the next plan. Our Chaos Escalation League, we plan on. I plan on using them as Red Corsairs. Hello, Frusion. Yeah, I forgot to change the title when I started filming. I did the Crisis Protocol rules overview this morning, and then uploaded it to YouTube pretty much right away. I changed the title then and forgot to change it just now before I started going because I was like a minute or two behind trying to post things on other social media to let people know we were doing this right now. So apologies for the title being wrong. When I put it on YouTube next week, I'll make sure to change the title so it makes sense. So if you are looking for Crisis Protocol Rules Overview, go check out our YouTube page. They're there. It's up. So The Freed, I actually tried to enter a short story contest a couple years ago with a story about them against the Salamanders. They're their most hated enemy because the Salamanders have the closest like strike force near them, and they didn't show up to help, even though that's like what Salamanders are supposed to be known for, is like helping those in need. So they really hate the Salamanders, which I thought was just kind of a cool little thing. Normally I would pick something that like somebody near us that I often game with plays, but nobody really plays Space Marines around here. Timmy kind of has a Raven Guard army, but I don't think he even played with it. It'd be nice to see that get done eventually, but so their official fluff is that they really hate Salamanders. Unfortunately, that story didn't get picked up for an anthology, which I thought was too bad because I thought it was pretty cool. The whole idea was that it followed the Salamanders when they investigate a Space Hulk. They find a distress, they get called to a distress signal coming from a Space Hulk, and they're like, well, we're Salamanders, we gotta check it out, basically. So it followed a sergeant who ended up leading a strike team because they were on their way back from a campaign and they were seriously depleted. There were only a handful left, so they were basically a ragtag group of a few tacticals, a bunch of tacticals, a few Terminators, and a couple Devastators. And the sergeant was the highest ranked guy survived. Their captains, lieutenants were all dead from this particular company. Or demi company, or whatever it is that they send out smaller. Strike Force, I guess. So they were in one little cruiser, and they came across the distress signal, and they were like, oh, let's go help these people. And, of course, the story ends up, it's the pretty newly formed Freed were the ones sending out the signal, because they still had all their Imperial codes and whatnot. They're freshly painted over armor, and it was basically these salamanders try to make their way through the Space Hulk, but they get waylaid and sneak attacked by these guys. And the fact that they were so few Imperial citizens left when they turned, basically all the Imperial citizens turned with them as cultists. So it was going to be a real action-packed story with kind of the introduction to the Freed, and I felt like if it had gotten accepted in this story, I thought it would have been really, really awesome that the Freed would have been official canon. But like I said, unfortunately, it didn't make it. And again, we'll try someday with something else with them. So yeah, the Freed are just kind of general chaos guys. They don't follow any god more than the other. So I've got berserkers with them. They tend to kind of, because they're so new, they tend to kind of branch out and like hire or find guys to work with them. So the berserkers are from the Khorne warband called the Wrath, and they have some plague bearers that fight alongside them, and they're from another warband called the Cleaved. And then the Rubric Marines I just got that I assembled last week. Just kind of started painting them, trying to a contrast, not exclusive, but mostly contrast scheme. They'll just be basic Thousand Suns. Basically, my idea there is that they hired a sorcerer to help bolster their psychic powers, and he they don't really know that he's just an aspiring sorcerer, and he brings his little unit of Rubricae with him as bodyguards, and they're like, sure, you can fight alongside us with them. They're weird. That's okay. Excuse me. So that's where they've got a little bit of pretty much everything in there. Not Noise Marines. Maybe eventually, if they ever come out with plastic Noise Marines, I might actually include them. But for now, no plans there. Slaanesh isn't my favorite of the gods to include, much to Taylor's chagrin. But, you know, to each his own. Khorne's my fave. So I talked a couple weeks ago about how I converted up some Blood Warriors to be Khorne Berserkers. So they've got, I got 20 of those now to kind of flesh out that portion of it. Not nearly as much blue trim on him as I thought there was going to be. Mostly gray. But he's got a lot of other stuff going on, so that's okay. I don't know how well we can see this right now. Let's see. A little bit, especially in the back, there's not as much. Other models I've painted these raised parts, kind of almost look like hydraulics or something. I think I'll do those more metal to kind of make them look more brutal. So I got a few people watching here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can throw out some ideas as well. I need to come up with a name and some fluff for this leader that this Abaddon model is going to represent on the table. So he would have been the chapter master of the Brazen Lords before they became the Freed. Obviously, he wields like a big. Like I said, he's just going to use Abaddon's rules, but I want something in the fluff to represent him as somebody else. So I gave him the helmet with like the half-covered face, so he doesn't look It doesn't look as much like Abaddon. I debated chopping off his top knot as well, but normally I hate top knots, but I feel like it actually works on this model. Probably just because, you know, that's Abaddon's look. Without a top knot, it doesn't look like Abaddon, which makes me want to remove it even more in a way, but I feel like it really works with this particular model. I kind of imagined and kind of covered it up and was like, I don't really like the way that looks. I think I'll just keep it. So I need to come up with a good name and some fluff for this guy, because he would have been like the #1 voice about dissenting, or it could be that it was kind of like a Horus and Erebus moment where the leader wasn't the first one to turn. Maybe it was a chaplain that's now a Dark Apostle. That's a little too Erebus, maybe. I actually now that I'm thinking about it, I like the idea of I have Master of Possessions. I can say he was once the chief librarian for the the chapter. Maybe he was the first one to fall from this little bit of corruption because he was a psyker. Because my guys, they seem to love demons. I got lots of demon type units like Obliterators and Demon Engines and Possessed, and I love Greater Possessed. So there's something about this, the demonness of them was what really turned them. So it could be that it started from this guy that's now a Master of Possessions. He was a librarian, now he's a Master of Possessions. And he kind of convinced, or maybe he, even better, let's say he used his psychic powers to kind of turn more people in the chapter, especially the chapter master. In case you're wondering, cleaning the brush, I had a little bit of dried blue up near the, I forget what this is called, the metal part where it's glued in. Clean off with this awesome brush cleaner. Learned about this stuff first from Taylor. You can get a little pot of it on Amazon for like, I don't know, $5 or $6. Super cheap, super awesome. Smells really good. It smells like lemon. I love it. But it works really well. So I just always have it by the paint station. Use it regularly. Every few rinsing off the brushes, give it a swoosh in there, swirl it around. It says you're supposed to use warm water to swirl it, but I'm not gonna go and like get warm water from the sink every time. So it seems to work just fine with my room temperature water. It's been sitting there for a while. Alright, so I'm sure I'll find more blue trim as we go. I think I already forgot his left gauntlet, so we're gonna do that. Get that back out. So I think he's got a couple skulls and helmets and stuff, and he's got this dead body in his base. I think I'm gonna paint the body as a salamander, because I said the Freed's favorite enemy is the salamander, and I think I'll do the head here. It's Primaris. Let's do a Primaris Lieutenant, just because everybody loves Primaris Lieutenants. Would love to see a dead one. Give me a shout out. What chapter should I make the Primaris Lieutenant from on his trophy rack? I won't do it tonight, so again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can still chime in what chapter should I make it from that this guy killed. And again, I'm gonna take some ideas for names. I've had these guys, the idea for the Freed, and I've had these models for over a decade, and never came up with names for like any of the characters or anything. I've got a couple different Chaos Lords, I've got a couple different Sorcerers. That Master of Possessions definitely needs a name. Got a Dark Apostle. Got an old, he was just, used to just be a, what's it called? It was just a Chaos Lord of Khorne. He had like a demon weapon. He's got that two-handed demon weapon, but he doesn't really have specific rules anymore. I just use him as a Chaos Lord here and there with a power axe. But now he makes a perfect Master of Execution, so he's definitely going to need a name. So do they all have to be certain colors? I looked at getting some just because I like to paint. They can be whatever colors you want, really. Like I said, this blue and gray scheme is something completely homebrewed. There's no... This is something I'm totally making up myself. There's nothing official about it, so you can paint them literally whatever you want. You can see I got some Age of Sigmar guys over here. These Deepkin, again, are a homebrew, what they call Enclave, different factions of the Deepkin. Kind of orangey coral color for their armor, with like tan robes and some blue accent, and then they got the yellow, I don't even know what those things are, little hair trophy things. That something totally homebrew. You don't have to paint them anything specific, unless you want to paint them as a certain thing from the lore. Like if you like the salamanders I was talking about. If you want to say these are salamanders, and they're green. And even then, especially with Space Marines, you can just say they're a successor chapter to the salamanders and still paint them whatever color you want. I don't know of any salamander successor chapters off the top of my head, but like my Blood Angels, I feel as Blood Angels, my Space Marines, Blood Angels are typically like bright blood red armor. And I thought that when I first started Blood Angels, I thought that was boring and didn't want to paint just bright red. So I looked up some stuff and found out really in the Codex, because they even have a character in the model, a successor chapter called the Flesh Terrors, which have dark red armor with black like shoulder pads and helmets. And I thought that was cool how it broke up the model. It wasn't just red. I thought it was more interesting that way. So the Blood Angels, I just play them as Blood Angels, and they're Flesh Terrors. So really, what's, it's your hobby. Do what you want with it. You can do pretty much anything. I used to have orcs. I had about 1,500 points of orcs, and their skin was yellow because they were led by the Great Gold Orc. And I just kind of fluffed it out that orcs, if they believe something, it becomes true. Like their guns don't work if anybody but an orc picks it up. Um, but because they believe it, that their gun is the shootiest and loudest and has the most DACA, it works for them because every orc has a little tiny bit of psychic power. Um, so the leader, the Great Gold Orc, his whole thing was that he thought he was awesome because he was gold. He was like kind of a mutant, and he was born with this gold skin. So which is kind of this ochre, dark yellow skin, but he called it gold, so it sounded better. And he was convinced that he was the biggest and strongest because of this skin color. So all the other orcs thought that they'd be the biggest and strongest if they were that same color. So they all started to turn this color for his Wa. Unfortunately, I sold that army off years ago. I actually I typed up a stuff about it. So like, this is why you're getting yellow orcs. I never seen him again, of course. But I always wondered if that person rolled with it or changed it or what they did. Always been very curious about that. I'd love to know what happened to them. No idea about any of these characters. That's totally fine. There's so much involved with it. It's just, if you want to paint them just to paint them, go for it. I love painting. I find it very relaxing. A lot of people get hang-ups about it because they feel like they're not doing it right or whatever, but there's really no wrong or right way to paint. Just, do what you want. I've been doing it for a long time, so I know I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back, but I've talked to some people at different events and like tournaments and things, and they look at my stuff and sometimes they get like intimidated that it's like I have all this painted. I'm like, don't stress yourself out about it. Don't feel like you want to play and you're expected to have an army that's totally painted right off the bat. Like most of my stuff has been painted over more than 10 years. It's been a long time. I tell them don't expect to just jump right to this right away. You're gonna start small. All right, so we had some red accents picked out there. Next up, I'm going to start picking out some the metal parts with lead belcher. I forgot to say that the red I did was just basic corn red, base paint, and then we're going to go with the base lead belcher, the darker of the metals that I'm a big fan of most of the time. I say most of the time because sometimes it kind of separates, so you got to always shake your pots. Wow, it's already been half an hour? Dang. Yeah, some stuff takes forever sometimes. So we'll get some paint on the palette. Good old ancient movement tray from Fantasy. I'll just slather up with paint. And let's pick out metal parts. Start with the claw. The Talon of Horus. In this case, it'll be something else because this isn't really Abaddon. This is... I don't have a name for him yet. Throw some names out. Let's come up with some ideas. I need to think of... so he had the same name as the Brazen Lord guy. I don't think he's going to change his name. Maybe he would. Maybe to get like a demon name or something. I'm going to think about what their names could have been beforehand. Maybe base them off of something. Let's see. They were orange and blue. I kind of want to give them like Scottish names. Maybe their orange and blue was reminiscent of like the idea of like a tabard kind of thing, or not tabard, a tartan. So maybe they could have like Scottish names. That'd be kind of cool. Oh, I remember. I'm not gonna keep it, but years ago I did name the guys and named them after Fire Nation characters from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I had like Chaos Lord Ozai, and I think it was Chaos Lord Zuko, and my sorcerer was Ozai and Iroh and stuff like that. But I don't want to keep that forever. Let me say Rosh. That's kind of cool. I like that name, Rosh. Might fit that in somewhere. I like how it sounds kind of Rosh McDonald. That sounds kind of Scottish. I like how it sounds kind of like almost brutal and guttural. Rosh. I like that. I'll have to figure out who's that going to go with. We got Lord, we got Chaos Lords, we got Sorcerers, we got the Master Possessions, we got the Leader here. All kinds of different places that name could go. I like it. Somebody's going to be named Rosh. Alright, at this point I'm not being super careful where I'm throwing this down on his little combi bolter thing on the back of his gauntlet, because most of these parts I'm going to paint over with black anyway. The casing of the bolter will be black, so I'm just going to paint over it, so I'm not super concerned about being super tidy. Same with all these cablings. He's got like exposed parts where it's been frayed. I'm not worried about painting around, painting perfectly there, because those cables are going to get painted something else. Then he's got, I forget what the word is for it, this, the weaker points in the armor between the joints. It has a certain word, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. I don't know why, my models, I've always painted it a metallic. I know often the studio models, they paint it like black. Ribbing, I think they call it, maybe? I don't know, I just like the idea of it being metallic, so I'm going to keep up that trend and do that metallic. Paint these vents on the back of his Terminator armor metallic. We'll get that washed. I'm going to do all the metallics here and then touch up the gray before I do the black wash to give it some shading and depth, because all the metallics are going to be the same. They're going to get shaded the same. We got some more ribbing in his knee joints. Don't want to forget that. Then we'll paint some of this like piping here metallic as well, just to break up this big area of gray. I know it'll be washed, that'll help, but a couple different colors here and there helps to make the model stand out a little bit more, especially as a centerpiece, you know, leader model like this. Alright, we're getting there. We got a few more bits on the front. We'll do some cabling. Pipe there. We got some pipe here. It's got this cool chain with a skull on it, because it's not a Warhammer model unless there's a skull somewhere. Especially Chaos. This makes sense. Skull of a salamander he killed, maybe. Need some more. Alright, what else? What else? I think that's about it I have for the Freed. They're not... It's funny that I've had these guys for so long and never really developed them any further than that. Not that you have to if you're doing a homebrew kind of thing. Certainly nothing that says you have to come up with story behind them, but it's just fun for me to do that. So have a little bit. Not a ton. Alright, let's paint a sword silver, and we'll paint over it probably with maybe contrasts or just some washes to give it some different color. I gotta look at other models in the army, see what color I've done their power weapons. I can't remember. I think they're blue, light blue. To kind of go with the blue on the trim of the armor. But they may be purple, but I can't remember. It's been too long since I've actually fielded anybody with power weapons. My chaos stuff, I usually go pretty shooty, or my close combat stuff is like raptors and warp talons, which aren't even painted hardly, because I just haven't gotten around to it. I actually used them a bit in the last couple of years and just never got around to painting them. Some of them have some color on them. They're at least primed, I think. Most or all of them, so it's not like they're bare plastic, because I can't stand playing with bare plastic when I can help it. Obviously, I'm as bad as anybody else out there that war games, and I certainly don't have everything painted, but I like to think I have more than most. I have pretty much all my Blood Angels done, except for a couple of Dreadnoughts. It's just been a long time since I've added to them. AdMech is pretty much, damn near 100%, if not 100%. I think I have my new Tech Priest Manipulus is like 80% done. I used him a couple times and wasn't a huge fan of him, so he never got finished. When I've got one Sidonian Dragoon. That's just prime metal that'll get painted someday because I like them. It was nice to get my new Dune Strider painted up for that tournament. It was a good kind of reason to get it painted up quick. So it was nice to buy a model and have it painted in a month instead of like Abaddon here I got back in April for my birthday and just finally getting paint on them now. So Frusion, if you're still there, thanks again. If you're not, thanks anyway. Appreciate it. It was really nice. It was a great birthday for that kind of stuff. It was a great birthday overall. They threw me a surprise cereal themed birthday party, which I had joked about at one point and never thought of it again. Danny told me later that it had actually been my idea as a joke to throw a cereal themed party. So people, I came in the house and they had on this big counter, just tons of boxes of different cereal. It was awesome. Ate cereal. We don't eat cereal much anymore in the house, just because we try to eat healthier breakfasts. And we had cereal for weeks. Because you can't go wrong with like Reese's Puffs and Cinnamon Toast Crunch, is some of my favorite things ever. So that was pretty awesome. And then we got Abaddon. Anthony and Justine were awesome and got me the Lord Discordant. It was kind of funny because it wasn't out yet, or it was delayed. Anthony's one of the owners of our local game store, and they gave me like a picture of it, and I couldn't figure out what the picture was. They drew it, and I felt like an idiot because I didn't know what it was supposed to be. It took me forever. I made some stupid guesses, and they were like, "It's this guy that you really want." And I was like, "Oh, awesome!" My wife got me the Vigilus Ablaze book, so it was like the chaos, the birthday of chaos. Oh, and Timmy, my brother, got me these awesome Reavers that I've been working on for my Deepkin that are almost there. Got a lot of work done with them the last couple of days. Oh, one thing I want to talk about I've been doing for hobby lately is while I've been painting, I used to watch a lot of bat reps, almost exclusively mini wargaming, but I just found that I was never actually watching them and hardly paying attention. I would just listen. So JB, who is running our WFRP game that'll go up probably the next couple of months because it'll take forever for us to actually get a few episodes. We were talking, we were hanging out one day, and he said, we're talking about podcasts, and he highly recommended Glass Cannon podcast. And I was like, well, I never really got into podcasts. My daughter and I used to listen to, what's it called? Left my head. Myths and Legends. We used to listen to used to listen to Myths and Legends while we were like going to school, because she goes to school where I work, so she's in the car with me every day. So we listen to Myths and Legends a lot this fall until I got a new phone and kind of forgot about it with all different apps I had to figure out and whatnot. So now I'm going to use Wraithbone real quick. I'm going to interrupt myself, and I'm going to cover over all the spots that are going to be bone. Like we got a Tyranid skull here. I'm going to do probably probably 2 layers of this to get it nice and smooth. We're going to do Wraithbone over all these skulls and places that might be bone colored or something, or anywhere I want to use contrast over, just to get a lighter color from this gray to hit with contrast. So all these bones I'll hit with Skeleton Horde contrast afterwards, just to save some time. So doing a few layers of bleach bone and then or what's it called now? Ushabti bone and then a wash and then more Ushabti bone. We'll do probably 2 layers of Wraith bone and then Skeleton Horde, and that should be good. Good to go. Alright, so I totally interrupted myself and I don't remember what I was talking about. Yep, left my head completely. What the heck was I saying? It was something vitally important, I'm sure. I was telling some kind of a story. Something to do with JB. Oh, Glass Cannon. So he was like, yeah, you need to check out Glass Cannon. They play Pathfinder. And I was like, is it? And he was like, yeah. I was like, alright, actually sounds really cool. I'm gonna check that out. And I've been like obsessed with it. I'm on like episode 47 or something, and I've been listening for like 2 weeks. Anytime I'm in the car, it's playing. Which has been, I've been working summer school, so I've been driving to work every day by myself. So I've been listening to that then, and I'm listening to that while I paint now, so I don't have to worry about seeing anything, looking at anything, because it's a podcast. And You know, it's almost like I'm playing through the Giant Slayer adventure path from Paizo as I'm listening to these guys do it, and it's really fun to watch. It's really fun to listen to. The guys are pretty hilarious. It's almost better when they make mistakes or almost die, which happens a lot. But it's just I prefer it now while I'm painting to watching bat reps because I'm not actually watching the bat reps and I miss out a lot just listening to bat reps. I still do it here and there when doing other things. Like I put a bat rep on when I make breakfast in the morning because I make breakfast for pretty much everybody every morning. Not Lily because she eats breakfast at school, but I make the same breakfast for me and my wife every day. And now lately I've been making it for the baby Felix because he loves the breakfast sausage we get and usually eats the egg that I cook him. So now every morning I make 3 breakfasts, which really doesn't take any longer than the 2 I was making. And I usually put a bat rep on during that because I can watch that while like I'm cooking eggs because it doesn't take a lot of headspace to cook eggs. So we're getting close here with the Wraithbone. I'm gonna give it to the skin exposed on his head because I want to eventually hit that with a flesh. What's it called? The contrast Gilliman's flesh. I was gonna buy that when I was at the store today and I forgot. Got to play some Shadespire or Warhammer Underworlds, which I'm gonna be calling it from now on, just because Shadespire worked for a long time, but now that there's multiple, what they're calling seasons for it, with Beastgrave coming out soon, I feel like calling it Shadespire is kind of limiting in a way. Like it's much more than just Shadespire anymore. So I mean, it's called Warhammer Underworlds, and then they have these different like the seasons for it. So let's call it what it is, Warhammer Underworlds. Let's try Wraithbone on this helmet. We can try contrast on this helmet with whatever chapter we decide it's gonna be. I haven't tried contrast on Space Marines anything yet, really. So let's see how that goes. Have I talked about enough on how much I love contrast? I've done a couple videos on it. Unfortunately, the first one I did, which was kind of like my review, I didn't get saved on Twitch, so I wasn't ever able to put it on YouTube. So, if you didn't see that video, I love contrast. I think it's great. Oh man, Meatloaf sounds good. Unfortunately, we're not going to be at board game night tomorrow because we're going up to see my parents and pick up my daughter because she's been spending the whole week with my parents, which has been, I don't know, it's been kind of nice not to have to worry about 2 kids for a while, but I miss her a bunch. She's been up there she left last Thursday with my mom and dad, so it'll be a week since we've seen her, so miss her. It'd be nice to see the little weirdo again. So unfortunately we won't be at board game night, which we get to once in a while. Right. So like I usually do during the show, I like to talk about things that we're working on for the channel, up and coming type stuff. We've got episode 2 of Ruin Seekers coming out soon. Let's see, today's Wednesday, so yesterday we had a game of 40k. What was it? Timmy and I played a game of 40k up at the Mini Wargaming Bunker. We went up at the end of June for their grand opening celebration. Timmy and I played a game in the bunker. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to play with any of the Mini Wargaming guys themselves, but we got to film in their studio, which is awesome. The next day, Taylor and I got to just play a game. We weren't able to film it that time, but we were able to play a game in there, and that was super cool. So that went up yesterday. Oh, thanks, Marisa. Yeah, Lily will enjoy that as well, I'm sure. My Lily, when she gets back. And I know we got Rune Seekers Game 2 in the pipe. We got a game Taylor and I played of Warhammer Fantasy, Old Hammer, some people call it now. I played Ogre Kingdoms, and he actually didn't play Dwarves, he played some Night Goblins, I'm gonna go get that in the pipe. As for further down the line, we've been starting to film or record just the audio for some Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the new 4th edition. Did our first session last Friday, so a little over half a week ago. And it was a blast. We had so much fun. We did enough content we did 2 episodes to start, but I want to get a bunch kind of on deck, ready to go before we start letting them out, just to make sure that we can keep it at a regular pace, because our schedule for recording that is so sporadic. It took weeks to schedule the first one, and not everybody could even make it then. We had to cut Timmy out. Unfortunately, he couldn't. He had to work that. He got his boss asked him to come work that night at a food truck. He makes tacos at a food truck sometimes. Really good tacos. Actually had those a couple days ago. That was fun. So if you're in the podcast or role-playing games, or if you just want to listen to people have a good time, and we kind of talk about the rules here and there, people playing a role-playing game, check that out when it comes out. It's going to be called Ulrich's Fury, if I can say it right. A Warhammer Fantasy podcast. Which anybody that's played WFRP, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay for short, understand what that's all about. And if not, then we also include what it is in there, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay podcast. So, look forward to that in the next couple of months. I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be sweet. Like I said, it was really fun. We're kind of learning a new game. I played WFRP since the 2nd edition came out in 2005. But this is 4th edition. It's a little bit different. It's made by Cubicle 7 Games, and they're doing a nice job. They're really treating it with respect of a game that has some legacy to it. The first WFRP, I believe, came out in the 80s or early 90s, that not a lot of people knew about or played back then. 2nd edition really breathed new life into it in 2005, because it was like, hey, this used to be a thing and now it's back. Which I was really excited about, because it's when not long after I started getting into things like RPGs and miniature games, so it was this perfect amalgamation. Remember, I ordered it directly from, it was Black Industries, was the imprint of GW's own Black Library that made it, and at the time the only place that was selling it was their own website in England, so it ended up costing me $60, which at the time seemed like a lot, because I was a freshman in college and didn't have much money, didn't have a job or anything at the time. It seemed like an awful lot for one book, but it was totally worth it. That thing is well used. I remember when it came in, I was so excited, I probably just spent 3 days reading it and nothing else. I was an art student, so it was fine. But yeah, so WFRP 4E, Super Pump 4. So talking about Crisis Protocol earlier. We're going to cover the heck out of that. I know Tim, special guest Tim, is super excited for that. I told him about it while we were having those tacos, and he was like, when's this happening? I'm in. He's like, we're splitting a starter? And I was like, I might actually get my own starter, but we'll see how that goes. So that's something we're definitely going to be covering in the future. Poster just fell off the wall at me. Like I said, I got my rules overview video up on YouTube. It's still on Twitch too, I'm sure, because I filmed it this morning, so it'll be up for a week on Twitch, where I just kind of go through the rulebook and talk about, like I said, overview. And it was a bit longer than I anticipated. I thought it'd be like 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. It's 38 minutes, because when I get excited, I just keep talking. But I feel like there's a lot to cover. Wanted to talk about just the idea that this game is super exciting. So I haven't been this excited for a game in a while. I loved HeroClix for a long time after that came out. Kick myself now because I sold all this stuff at a yard sale years ago, and it was just like, why? Didn't really need that extra. I think I sold way too much of it for like $50, and it just wasn't worth it. I bought a bunch back in the last couple of years. A lot of them from Chuck, actually, of all people. Because I got my game club after school once a week. Play with students, and that was the game of the week a couple of times. Trying to teach kids that and kind of bring it back. with the other gamers around too. Didn't really take off, unfortunately, but I think people love miniature games around us. We got a couple really die-hard people um, that really love miniature games, so hopefully kind of pair that with people's love of comics too, is the whole idea, obviously. So super excited for that. That's going to get a bunch of coverage when it comes out. Can't wait. Definitely painting videos, games, review, stuff like that. Brian's been dying to people over. Just Frankie and her girlfriend. All right. Yeah, let us know. I love hanging out with friends, especially for like dinner games. That sounds like a great night. So where are we at here? The Wraithbone is taking a while to dry. Just figured I'd get a base color on the base there, get that started while the Wraithbone's drying, but that's still pretty wet. I don't want to do another coat yet. I'll let that dry some more. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do about this. I have Horus here on his shoulder pad. That's very Black Legion. That's their symbol. So I can kind of think of what I want to do with that. Do I just want to leave it and just say that like that's how they're another way they're showing their dedication to Chaos? It doesn't have to be Black Legion. I could try to file it off, but that looks... I don't want to do that. That's a pain. Just, no, I don't want to do that. So let's see. What else can we do with him right now? Let's get some gold on the hilt of his sword there, the crossbow. Unfortunately, I've never felt like GW's had the best gold, so I got Gehenna's gold here. This needs a lot of shaking. And let's see, that's pretty good. One thing that drives me crazy about this particular paint is that there's a lot of red in it. So when it starts to separate at all, it separates to like gold and red, and that looks pretty good. If you don't get a good enough of a shake, then it gives you this weird, very like rose gold, a lot of red in it, and I don't like that. So shake it up really well. The other thing about GW golds is their coverage is awful. You know, their whole thing has always been 2 thin coats until contrast, 1 thick coat. But you know, with metallics, you don't usually need 2 thin coats of metallics, but golds, 100%, at least 2. Often, if I'm doing large areas of gold, or like a model has a lot of different places with gold, I will give it a base coat of like a yellow. One of my favorites is this Zamesi Desert, I don't know, or Baylor Brown are good ones. Kind of darker yellows that'll give it a good base, and then I'll apply the gold over that, and it usually cuts it down by a layer instead of just applying it over this dark gray. Probably not the best way to start. So I just noticed there's another Eye of Horus on his little trophy rack thing. So I'm just going to leave it as their, just showing their dedication to Chaos, and not necessarily that they are Black Legion. They don't want to be Black Legion, they want to be Night Lords. So this is just another way to show their affiliation for Chaos. Because really, yeah, it's the Eye of Horus, it's the symbol, but really it's the mark of aversion. To say, hey, watch out, this is something scary. So we're just going to leave it. I'm going to do it gold just so it sticks out a bit. Give it some highlight here. Just so shoulder pad's not super boring, just blue. You know what? I'm going to make the eyeball of the eye like a light blue. Again, make it stick out a little bit more so it's not just this big area of gold. Ugh. I got to touch up some more gray over here. You're messing it up. What's going on? Okay. Like lost where I was going there. Let's see, what other things are in the pipeline? We got Timmy, Taylor, and I are going to be doing a Chaos Space Marine Escalation League I've talked about a few times. Timmy's playing Thousand Suns. He's painted up a Rhino so far, and he's going to get the Start Collecting box. Taylor's going to be doing Emperor's Children because he loves Slaanesh, and he's got lots of Slaanesh demons now that he can summon in later on in the campaign. And I, of course, will be running Khorne. At the moment, I plan on running them red Corsairs so they can get that reroll or run and assault, which I love the idea of. Haven't used them yet like that, but it sounds good to me. Because I'm not the biggest fan of the World Eaters trait or painting them as World Eaters. They're going to be painted as the Wrath anyway, so I figure if they're not even painted like that Legion, I can use whatever Legion I want. Like Timmy obviously is going to use Thousand Sons because they have their own book and everything. Got him that for his birthday. And Taylor is going to be doing Emperor's Children because he's actually painting them as Emperor's Children. I'm going to run them as Emperor's Children. He didn't have options for Slaanesh before, but with Vigilus Ablaze, he does now. He could use what are they called? Flawless Host is another potential option for Slaanesh. I can't remember what their benefit is off the top of my head because I never planned on playing them, so I just kind of glossed over it. Well, he's got a couple options now. He doesn't have to do just Emperor's Children, but he does plan on playing Lucius. I think he already ordered the model off of eBay. He's going to have Lucius the Eternal. Timmy's going to have Armin because he's getting the Start Collecting box, which Armin comes in, which is weird. So I figure I gotta get Karn at some point to be the leader of my list. We'll be filming that once everybody gets their stuff together and painted, which unfortunately could take a while. I don't even have it all painted yet. My first list includes a bunch of Berserkers that I converted up but haven't painted, and a Rhino, and some Possessed that are painted, and that guy that's going to be a Master of Executions, old Chaos Lord of Khorne. He's painted. So I just need to paint up some more. I need to finish all the Berserkers because I changed they used to be just Emperor's, or, way off. It used to be just World Eaters, red. But making them the Wrath is actually very similar to the Flesh Terror scheme, so with black and red. I think it's just kind of the opposite where the black and red is. And then their helmets are... The helmets and like the cases of their weapons are bone colored, which I think is cool looking. So, gotta finish repainting all my Berserkers that. Like I said, eventually someday I'll get Karn and he'll be in that scheme, not World Eaters, just because I don't like the idea of one dude looking different. And again, it doesn't have to be Karn himself. It can be some kind of Khorne worshipping dude that just happens to have the same stats as Karn. Just like Abaddon here. Not really being Abaddon. Speaking of Abaddon, I'm using Abaddon Black here to color the casing of his cool twin bolter thing in the Talon of Horus, and then all this cabling eventually is going to be black with the bits exposed silver. So I'm going to probably take a little while, but I'm just about out of time here. Trying to keep these to an hour. I know a couple weeks ago when Taylor and I were doing Shadespire, it went way over, and it was closer to 2 hours, but we were having a good time, so we just kind of kept going. And he wanted more practice. He wanted to figure it. Really wanted to get it, so we ended up playing 2 games instead of just the one we'd initially planned. So, oh, it's 10:01. I already went over. All right, so actually, I'm going to end it here. Let's clean off this brush, and we'll see how much an hour of painting did for Abaddon. So we got a bunch of base coats done. He's not done base coated. He's got a lot to go, of course. We got the blue blocked out. We got the gray. He's going to need some touch-ups, but that's okay. And then we got the Wraithbone, which still isn't dry in spots. It's kind of crazy. We got one layer of that done. We're going to need another one. And then pretty much the whole model, except the Wraithbone and the sword, is going to get a wash of Nuln Oil to darken it up and make it black. So we'll see some updates of him as he goes. I'd like to get him done before summer's over, just so he can finally be done. It'd be nice. And then we can start doing that Lord Discordant that I got at the same time. Excuse me, one more time. So, once again, thanks for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you think of any more names, we've got Rosh so far. I'm going to have to write that down or something. Well, let's see if we can get some more names for not Abaddon here, and other Chaos Lords and Sorcerers and The Master of Execution is going to need a name for that. Escalation League, our Master of Possessions is going to need a name. Dark Apostle is going to need a name. We need names for all this kind of stuff, so we can really flesh out the Freed here. Let's make, well, kind of invite the community in to help flesh out this homebrew chapter a little bit with us. So, you know, like, if you like the video, like it. If you got some, any, what's the word I'm looking for? I lose words a lot. Brain damage. Comments, suggestions, anything like that, any constructive criticism, anything like that, let us know. You can comment on the video. You could send us, comment on Facebook somewhere. Anything like that. Number one thing is to subscribe. Hit that little notification button so you know when we have new videos posted. We've got these Twitch streams going up every Wednesday. Regular battle reports every other Tuesday. And eventually we'll be adding WFRP and other things like that to the mix, trying to kind of expand, really have our audience have lots of stuff to check out. Other than that, I'll see you next week, and game on. I didn't hit the end button right. Are you sure?